Hello, and welcome to the Guilbault Girls Show, where you will have the opportunity to hear from mothers, fathers, siblings, and individuals themselves about their journey of living with a disability. I know, it's called Guilbault Girls, but we have a bonus for you as we get the Guilbault boys to interview some of the dads and siblings and get their perspectives too. We'll also have special guests from time to time to share the many resources that are available to those living with a disability and their families. So get ready to laugh, smile, cry, maybe even get a little angry when you hear some of these stories of their day-to-day struggles. But let's not forget their many triumphs. As they say, it takes a village. And if it weren't for our village, we wouldn't be where we are today. So join us. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Guilbault Girls. I am your host, Karen Guilbault. I am now starting to say that because before I did not. I just said Guilbault Girls. People didn't know who I was, probably. So today we have Dr. Kiersten McCartney. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. She's the founder of Run Your Days. Run Your Days is a small business focused on coaching people of all abilities to their goals. So let's just stop right there and reread that because I just think that's amazing. I'm going to reread it. Run Your Days is a small business focused on coaching people of all abilities. Notice all abilities. I couldn't love that more and everything about what you're doing. So I can't wait to dive in. Kiersten's passion lies where sports and neurorehabilitation intersect, and she aims to facilitate the engagement and participation of people with disabilities in physical activity, exercise, and sport. So thank you so much for being on the show today. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about you, your background, and what inspired or led you to pursue your degree and love for helping others achieve their goals.
So hi everybody. My name's Kiersten McCartney, and I'm so excited to be on here. So again, thanks for having me today. I guess a little bit of background. My mom jokes that I came out running and I never stopped. So physical activity, exercise, just moving your body's kind of always been, I feel like, innate to me. And so I grew up playing a bunch of different sports, mostly did track and field in high school, and then ran for a couple years in college. And then just kind of continued running and ran a couple marathons post-college. And then now I've been doing CrossFit for a little bit over a year now. So that's kind of the physical activity background. I would say I've always been pretty genuinely curious about the human body. So a lot of that came from sport. I had a couple coaches who were more in tune with anatomy and physiology stuff. And so sometimes they would drop those things and I was always curious about it. So, I feel like you're a kid, you like science, people are like, you should go to med school, and you kind of hold on to that. So, I kind of thought I would go to medical school, and that was my goal. I went to Ohio State, so go Bucks, for college, and studied biology. Really did think I would go the med school route, but I ended up taking a exercise science class my senior year and felt like a game changer. So I remember walking in the room and everyone was wearing athletic clothes, and I just was like, oh, these are my people. Here we go.
Uh-huh.
So I just always loved the human body. And then it was oh, well, if you exercise in this way, this is going to happen. Or if you exercise in that way, it's going to happen. And so that for me was putting more of a scientific background to all of these athletic pursuits that I had personally had experience with. And I just thought that was how that weaved together was so great. And along this whole time of growing up, if you do sports, you're on a team, and my track coaches in high school, I think back all the time on the lessons that they were teaching us. And so for me, sports has kind of always been a vessel for other things. It helps me get out my emotions, whether they're the great emotions or the not so great emotions. I can work through all of those on a run. And so that for me is really helpful. I think it's always kept me kind of more focused. If I don't work out, I'm just a spaz, and I'll just, oh, squirrel, there's a squirrel over there. And, let's focus. So there's things like that. But I think, there's also the aspect of training for a marathon teaches you patience, right? It's not going to happen overnight. It's a 4-month endeavor. And then you have one day where you hope that all the stars align, and newsflash, they usually don't align. So it's you go through that again, but through the process, you kind of learn, hey, like this is what I have to do. But if I put in this work, I can potentially have this outcome. I can put myself out there and be vulnerable and try this. And I think all of those aspects that in this context are talking about marathon running are just that you put them in any other situation, right? So, oh, I can do that. If I put the work in, I'll see a result. And so that can then go to, if I put work into my relationships, they're probably going to be more full. If I put work, if I put more work into this skill that I'm trying to gain for my career, I'm probably going to get better at it. And it's going to take time. It might always not happen the way I think it's going to happen. And so I just, have really come to see how much that in fitness and sport just, I think, transcends the gym. And then now with like doing CrossFit and even just strength training before that, there's like something pretty powerful about like picking something heavy up and putting it back down, or like putting it overhead. Like you're just like, I am strong, like I can do things. And I just think that feeling again, like will transcend outside the gym. So that's kind of where we are there. I will, I'm sure we'll get into this so you can, dive in further to it. I like to coach people of all abilities, and I have a very strong passion for helping people who have different abilities. And I think all of those things I just talked about are important for everyone. And I would advocate for them no matter what your abilities are. But I think when it comes to people with disabilities, there's a lack of understanding of how to bring those type of opportunities to them. People are nervous. The athletes might be nervous. And then all of a sudden we have this, bad negative cycle where people with disabilities maybe don't understand the benefits of exercise because they've never been exposed to it, because nobody has given them the exposure to it, and community spaces aren't open to them. And so for me, I actually think it's a lot of fun to train, people of different abilities, because it's always a puzzle. And I first came across that in my, I worked as an exercise physiologist at the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab in Chicago, Illinois, after college for a couple of years. The best way to describe my job is it was a combination of physical therapy and personal training. And that job is actually what really kind of led me to choosing to pursue physical therapy school, because a lot of people thought I was already a therapist. And I was like, I'm actually not. But I was working side by side with them, and they obviously had a lot more just basic didactic knowledge that I really wanted to, again, like I'm a nerd, I embrace it now. And so I just really wanted that I wanted the knowledge background, but I was having so much fun designing like exercise interventions. And my job started with doing group fitness classes for people with Parkinson's disease. And then it kind of morphed into teaching the group fitness classes, but also one-on-one training. And so, I worked with all different ages, all different disabilities, all different like physical capacity, stroke, spinal cord injury, multiple sclerosis, ALS, people with limb loss, like you name it, we saw it. And it was so much fun. Like I loved my colleagues, and every day, like I said, it was like, okay, people would come in and, if you did your evaluation, you ask them what their goals are, you kind of understand their process to what brought them into this essentially community fitness center. And then you're like, okay, well, what do you want to be able to accomplish? And that's for me, like, that's no different than when I have a non-disabled person reach out to me and tell me that they've run 2 marathons, but their goal is to qualify for the Boston Marathon. Okay, like I'm getting some background info and I know your goal. And we're going to talk about like what you're willing to put into it, how long it might take, what a training structure is going to look like. But it's like no different than someone who might have a spinal cord injury who comes in and is like, hey, this is who I am. I just finished my outpatient PT and I'm not sure what to do, but can you help me, learn how to sit up and transfer on my own? Like, okay, like we know where we're coming from and we have a goal. And my job, both then and now as, a physical therapist, is like, how are we going to get from point A to point B? It's the same. It doesn't, you know what I mean? So that's kind of what inspired me to pursue my degree, and really just led me to like, I just love when the two intersect, and I like bringing that in different capacities, whether it's, the research side of things, that gets my science nerdy brain really going. But being in action in a community center also helps me stay really connected to the people that I'm hoping to help long term. And so I think they feed one another. in a really interesting way. They keep me close to the cause, but the research lets me have this kind of overarching, like, all right, I'm building this super micro community right now in the scheme of things, but there's lessons I'm learning from that can feed research questions so that my micro, community can expand here, right? But can I provide a model? Or if someone reaches out to me, like, I want to start classes, right? I have personal experience of building something from the ground up that I can talk to them about it in that capacity, or if someone's like, I already run classes, but I want to run them better. Like, okay, well, here's the science on what works best for these people. Like, let's roll with it that way. So that's like probably more than you were hoping for.
Oh my gosh, no, I want it all. Are you kidding me? No, this is awesome. This is good stuff that, people tune in because they want to find out, they want to know, and it's all about, networking and spreading awareness of what's out there and what isn't out there and what needs to be out there. Right. So, and I love the fact too, which we'll get into, that you're working with the Peffleys, with Andrew Peffley.
Yeah.
So we ended up meeting the Peffleys when Faith played sled hockey with Andrew when he was little. Like he's like a teenager and like ripped from doing adaptive CrossFit, mind you. And I saw him a couple months ago. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, look at you, boy. So I'm actually going to interview him at another point, too. And I want to get all his take on taking your classes and everything. So let's back up just a little bit. So you wrote on your website that during your first undergraduate exercise science class that things just clicked. You found your space, which led to earning your master's degree in kinesiology. Can you share with us what kinesiology is and what was it that clicked?
That's like when I walked in the room, everybody was wearing athletic clothes. And I was like, oh, my people are in this room, like, but it was really, so kinesiology is basically the study of human movement. And people can expand it to how they impact our health and well-being. This class in particular was kind of like your intro to exercise science. So it takes it beyond just physiology. So I had taken a physiology course beforehand, but physiology, what is really broad, right? So you can study animal physiology, you can study human physiology. The context I took it in was human physiology. Then exercise science kind of takes that a step further. And it's in this class, it kind of was discussing the effects of exercise. On the other hand, it's the effects if you don't exercise, all on the human body. And then really understanding how exercise is going to impact the body in different environments, right? So if you're at altitude, how is that maybe different than if you're at sea level? Or if we're exercising in extreme heat, how is the body going to respond that's different to extreme cold? In a lot of exercise science, you can think about sports science. So anytime you maybe read about athletes and they're in these air chambers or, blood doping, on the other side of taking the science and turning it so someone can perform better. That's kind of all related to exercise science, kinesiology. Kinesiology is also going to include biomechanics, which is basically the mechanics of how the body moves. And so different joints, shoulder, knee, hip are going to look different ways during different activities. And so we can kind of study those, and people can take that any, number of ways. I have classmates right now who are, we're all in a biomechanics and movement sciences doctoral program, and the vast variety of research that's going on is crazy, right? There's a lot of people doing physical therapy type research, but I have colleagues who are studying the Achilles tendon, which I have no interest in, right? But I'm studying exercise in people with stroke, which maybe they don't have really an interest in. And then we have other people who are looking at how do the joints positions change in people who have knee osteoarthritis, and is there a better way to detect that earlier on? So you can really take kinesiology, biomechanics, you can take it so many different ways. It's really just a broad overlay of, how the body moves and the impact of human movement, essentially.
That's awesome. Thank you for explaining that to everyone. So what led you to start Run Your Days, and was it like a big undertaking, and kind of like tell us a little bit about how it's structured?
Yeah. So I started Run Your Days March 1st of 2017, I think it was. So I had briefly mentioned, like I'd thought about medical school. So in my senior year, I decided that I didn't want to pursue medical school. I went and got my master's in kinesiology. I loved the content, if you couldn't tell, about like exercise science, but for me, it wasn't clinically relevant enough. And so that's where I kind of was like, you know what, maybe I do want to go study medicine and I can be in a different realm that'll tie in this exercise and well-being. So over the course of 2 years, I applied to 45 different medical schools and I got straight rejected from all of them. And it was a rough time for sure, but it led me to where I am now. And so I'm so happy that those, 45 doors never opened. I'm so glad they stayed shut. But in that time frame, I was really struggling with like, well, this is what I thought I was going to do. And now I don't know what I'm going to do. And I had been a runner my whole life. And I was more integrated in the Chicago running scene at that time. I had run a couple marathons and had trained with a group for the Boston Marathon, and just really like knew the people there. And somebody reached out to me, I think it was like December of 2016. I'm still coaching this individual, and was like, hey, do you coach? Like, I see you post stuff. And it was one of those moments where I just thought about it and I just said, yep, I do. I was like, okay, like how much does it cost? And that was it. That was like, yeah, okay, like I was at that point, like I had people reaching out to me asking for essentially advice of coaching. And I was kind of giving it because I loved it and I knew it. And I love coaching. So I did it. And then all of a sudden someone was like wanting to hire me. And I was like, oh, me? Like this, me? And that was it. So that was kind of the impetus of starting Run Your Days, was like, okay, this medical school thing isn't working out right now. Even if it does, what if I start this small business and I just coach people on the side? And so it was always kind of meant to be that. And so, yeah, that's what started it. So, yeah.
That's awesome. And tell us about the Arena Adaptive, what it entails, where is it located? Do you plan to branch out to other gyms? All of that stuff.
Yeah. So, let's see. So Arena Adaptive is, a place where we want to build confidence, character, and community through fitness for people of all ability levels. It started way back when I was in PT school at University of Delaware. We have 2 rotations in the clinic downstairs. So there's a neurologic and older adult clinic and then a sports and orthopedic clinic. And once I left my job, sorry guys, I'm backtracking.
You're fine.
I know. I loved my job in Chicago. So the one where I was an exercise physiologist and I was working at the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab. I loved my job. And I'll be honest with you, I think if that job had more growth potential, there's a chance I would have never left. I did want to pursue, PT and research, but it was because that was like allowing me to grow more. And when I was 25, I was like, I can't be tapping on the ceiling right now. Like I've too much more that I'm curious about. So that's really what pushed me to PT school. But leaving my job and start going back to school meant that I was losing that interaction with people that I had really grown to, I'd worked with people for a couple of years at that point and I'd grown close to them. And I loved all the different people that I got to meet. And I knew I was going to miss that. And so I knew, okay, I'm going to Delaware for my PT, PhD. I'm going to be there for probably 7 years. I want to start some adaptive fitness classes at some point. And this is shocking for me, but I was smart enough to know I couldn't tackle that during PT school. And, the stars aligned, and my clinical instructor when I was in the sports and orthopedic clinic was Angela Smith, who worked at Delaware for about 12 years in the clinic and as a research PT. She still works as a research PT, but she owns her own private sports and orthopedic clinic here in Wilmington, Delaware.
Okay.
And so she was my clinical instructor. And at some point, it came up that I had an interest in working with people with disabilities, probably because I knew I was going to work with Dr. Reisman in the stroke lab. And it turns out that Angela is a Paralympic track and field classifier. And so she also has an interest in working with people with disabilities. And yeah, so after I finished my sports and orthopedic kind of rotation, it was May of 2019. Ange was a mentor for me. And so I kind of just kept coming up with questions so I could go ask her questions and like keep that mentorship going. Long story short, when COVID hit, there was a point where I reached out to Ange and I just asked how she was doing. And and I was alone. Like I had no roommates and I wasn't home. And we all know how tough COVID was on everybody from an isolation perspective. And, you know, things were tough, obviously, for her and her family as well. And I offered to I was like, I can't do much with the kids with school. She had 3 young kids. And I said, you know, I could come and like stand on the sidewalk and do like a fake gym class or whatever. And one thing led to another, and we ended up being what we now deem ourselves, the Corona Buddies. And so we became very close. So during COVID, you know, we were just kind of spitballing this idea of like adaptive fitness classes. And I was now really getting closer to starting the PhD when I knew I would have more time, and was kind of like poking Ange to see if she would be like interested in starting them. And so, I finished PT school in December of 2020. I come back in February of 2021, start my PhD, and we're kind of chatting, and COVID is certainly not over, but you know, things are starting to alleviate a little bit. I was looking to join a gym somewhere because I wasn't making any friends in my garage working out. And you know, said, well, why don't you come check out my my CrossFit gym up in Wilmington? And I had thought about starting CrossFit because I didn't really find a good running group here in Delaware. And I wanted to meet people. I wanted to make friends. And I came and I joined. But part of that was like, before I joined, I said to her, are they going to let us do our adaptive fitness classes here? Because if not, I'm not going to become a member. I'll go become a member somewhere else, and I'm going to launch them somewhere else. So like my membership was like contingent on doing adaptive fitness classes there. Like, I don't have time to mess around. I'm going to, you know. And so the owners at Riverfront Athletics were open to us kind of just testing the waters. And Ange and I were like, you know, there's these great adaptive sport programs in Baltimore. There's these great adaptive sport programs in Philadelphia. And then Delaware is kind of like in this middle place. And I had connected with Terry Peffley before I left for my clinical rotations in PT school to just kind of pick her brain of, and little did I know whose brain I was picking at the time, but like trying to pick the brain of like, what does a community need, right? So I can come in and say like group fitness classes are what everybody needs, but like that might not be what the community needs. And so I was trying to really get dialed in, and I asked Dr. Lobo and I asked Dr. Bott and Dr. Galloway at UD, like, do you guys know people who I could reach out to? And Tracy Stoner, who works, you know, as a PT. And so I just kind of reached out to these different connections that I had from UD to be like, do you guys know, or do you know anyone? And I'll take anybody's contact info. And yeah, so Terry just basically said like, the need's there's just not an opportunity. And she was very firm on that. And knowing Terry now, like I totally see, if I was in her situation, I would be the same way. I would be like, yeah, absolutely. There's just not opportunities. So, you know, Ange and I started some classes last summer. So 2021. Yeah. And we were like, okay, we just have to keep showing up because we might not have anybody. We're going to do like 1 class a week for 8 weeks, but we might show up for like 6 weeks and have no people show up. Well, that was not the case. We had like 3 athletes on the first day, and then we had 1 new athlete every week from there on out. And it was it was the best day of the week for sure. Like it was just so fun. At one point we had 3 people with transfemoral amputations, which those are a lot more rare than transtibial amputations. So transfem is like above the knee, transtibial is below the knee. And I just remember at one point these 3 athletes were like chatting with one another, and they were all at different phases. Like one was congenital, one accident was like a lot of years ago that they lost their limb, and the third person like was very recent. and you could see all of them talking and just like joking about their prosthetics and different things that they had gone into. And, that was like one of so many moments I could talk about. That was like, this is why we need spaces like this.
Yep.
Because, yes, they're getting interaction with people who understand. I don't have that experience. So I cannot share I can empathize with the stuff that I know about prosthetics and everything that can go wrong and how difficult it can be, but I do not have a personal experience to draw on. The other side that was amazing was there were members of the gym who are not disabled who would they were seeing what everyone was capable for. And some people just aren't aware, and they've never been around someone who uses a wheelchair, or they've never been around someone who uses a prosthetic. And so it is different. It is strange, right? And sometimes we don't know what to do with that, but that doesn't make it okay to inadvertently exclude people.
Right.
So it was also this piece of we had members of the gym who would come up to Ange and I at other points, during the week when we're just working out, and they're like, oh my God, your classes. And I started following this person, and it's so amazing. And it's that is another aspect of change that I don't know that I was anticipating or foreshadowing, but that's very real too. And I will tell you that Ange's oldest son comes to our classes. We call him our assistant coach, and he'll come help out sometimes. But we have Andrew, and we have another, we actually have two kids who are preteens, and that's about Owen's age, and they work out together, and now they have a friendship. And for us, I am loving the idea of the world that Owen is growing up in. Because Owen is never going to see someone who has missing, it doesn't have a leg or doesn't have an arm or uses a wheelchair, and it won't faze him. And that to me,
it'll be the typical norm.
Yeah, it'll be yeah, of course he can do that. I used to work out with this guy who did X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? Andrew's gonna beat Owen in a lot of workouts. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter that one uses a wheelchair and one doesn't. They can both work out next to one another. And it's just about adapting certain things to make the movement how it is. So, okay, so I haven't still not talked about Arena. I kind of have.
No, you're fine. I'm enjoying it. Go ahead.
We worked. So we did 3 or 4 8 to 10 week sessions at Riverfront Athletics. And it's a big growth thing. Part of it's trying to get the word out. I have now run down 3 people in the community, and I literally have given them my business card, and I express that I know I'm being forward, but I also know that those opportunities don't exist, and maybe it's just because people don't know that they're there. A lot of times
I can tell you, I was in the mall at the Disney store, and I got approached, and it was by our coach's wife at the time from sled hockey, Delaware Sled Snipers. Tammy just came up to me and started talking to us. Faith was in her walker, and she told us about the sled hockey. And she's like, even if you come out and just, so we were approached too. It's you have to because a lot of people don't know about those different things that are available.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad that we just,
yeah. So we just, it was kind of getting the word out. And then just the way that Ange and I kind of wanted to see the classes going, and the potential growth that we had, we were so grateful, and I will always be grateful to the owners of Riverfront Athletics for letting us, trial and launch this idea. But in August, we have switched locations, so we now run our classes out of More Than Fitness, which is also in Wilmington, Delaware. And we kind of were able to launch, now that, we were kind of under our own umbrella, Arena Adaptive, and really make it our own. And so, we were going back and forth, and Andrew's we need a name. And I'm we need people, but we also needed a name. She was absolutely right. And so, we're spitballing names, and I feel anyone who does marketing knows the power of kind of your name. And nothing was like, we had a bunch of different ideas and, texting each other back and forth. But I think for both of us, we hadn't had this like moment. And I was walking my dog. I was walking my dog in the morning, and something about like, I don't think it was in a podcast, like a quote came up. And then I was like, oh, that kind of reminds me of like the Man in the Arena speech that Theodore Roosevelt did. And so I was like, I gotta look that up. So I like look up his speech. And obviously there's like the big quote that everyone pulls from it about that the credit goes, to the man in the arena. And it's the one who's, I'm paraphrasing, but it's the one who has a lot of courage and is trying. And, they're dirty and they're sweaty and they're doing their best. And they're doing it not because they know that victory is going to happen, but because their efforts are never going to be in vain, whether they're victorious or they have defeat. And I was reading it and I was like, oh my God, what if we're arena adaptive? And then that quote, for everyone who's a fan of Brene Brown knows that she loves talking about, courage and vulnerability. And Ange and I are Brene fans, like eventual goal, which is good. I'm getting used to this, is like, I want to be on Brene's podcast as well. And so, I jokingly said like, that's part of why this is going to help us get on her podcast. And Ange's like, oh, okay. But it really was like arena adaptive, like, arena that we want to be in the arena. We want to be working hard. We're working towards these hard things and we're going to do it together. And Ange had come up, with the confidence, like building confidence, character, and community. Cause we had just said to one another the whole first year that we started, like, if you build it, big fan of Field of Dreams. And it's always like, if you build it. And I was like, if we build it, like they're going to come, the people are going to come. We just have to build it. We have to build it. And so, those were kind of arena adaptive, it's building confidence, character, and community through fitness. And we'll hashtag like, if you build it, because it's just, it's kind of personal, but that's really where it is. And so we started 3 weeks ago, kind of our first session at More Than Fitness. We're running 2 classes a week. They're both on Mondays. And we have 3 new athletes. I just had 2 more people reach out today. So our goal is really to just, again, get the word out to the community. Anyone is welcome. So it's really tailored towards people who have some sort of disability, but I don't care what that disability is. I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you haven't worked out in 10 years. I don't care if your accident happened yesterday or if your accident, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter to me. And we get those questions sometimes, like, someone, whether it's an athlete or, a caregiver for them or someone else will ask like, well, is it okay if they come? And I'm just like, I mean, do they want to work out? Then like, yeah, they can come, what, that's what it is.
Yeah. And because it's true. A lot of times sometimes you'll need the caregiver to kind of help assist them if you don't have the extra hands. And then also to help with to learn to do the carryover with them also.
Yeah.
And so have you reached out to AI DuPont or any of their groups to spread the word that way?
Yeah, I have a massive list of email addresses that I've accumulated over the past year. It started out where I just was like, okay, I want every like prosthetist, orthotist, PT, OT, anyone who's an advocate like in the area. And obviously this list has grown, right? Like I've met you now through Terry, and like through Terry I've been introduced to other, PTs and whatnot. And usually like through our athletes too, we can sometimes we'll sometimes learn of a new connection. And so yes, to answer that question, I have reached out to
Deb from Preston's March for Energy. Have you? So they're amazing. They are the ones that raise the funds to do the playground there in Wilmington, the adapted playground.
Do they do like mobility wheelchairs and stuff too?
They raise money and donate adapted bikes.
Yes. Okay. Yes. We have connected with them.
Yes. They're awesome. And I met them through Terry and Tammy and all of that too. Yes. Amazing. Amazing. And they're always, she's always running marathons and they always have the pushers, and it's just, oh my gosh, it's so awesome. Like following her on on Facebook also. Now, have you gotten any like kickback or whatever you want to call it for like liability? Because so I also did an interview with Kennedy Krieger, Team Adaptive Sports, and they have a few wellness centers, which actually she wants me to connect you to.
Oh, great.
Because they're starting to do some adaptive fitness as well, and she would love to pick your brain. Right. And we were kind of talking too about like, how about, how can you branch out and get into different, different gyms and that kind of stuff. But sometimes you get a little pushback because of the liability, because you're having somebody with a disability already. And if they, can get hurt doing something, that type of thing. Have you gotten any pushback or anything about that, about liability or anything trying to get into any gyms?
No, actually, my feeling on that is like, I feel like that's a false narrative, or maybe an outdated narrative is the better way to put it. So the only thing that Ange and I have really done, like when we started working at the RIV, was like making sure that we ourselves were safe. And so like, we actually have our own liability form that we have athletes fill out. And both at Riverfront Athletics when we were there, but also now More Than Fitness, athletes always sign the GYMS waiver, which is no different than a waiver that a non-disabled person would sign. And so, the non-lawyer way to talk about it is like, you're just signing away that like you are working out, you're putting yourself in these positions. There's aspects in there of like, high exercise can lead to X, Y, and Z. You have to be careful with equipment. That to me, like, it doesn't matter if you have a disability or not. It's the same. You're working out in the facility, manage the equipment, manage yourself. There is a personal responsibility to that, I think. And so we've never gotten pushback from that, but we have everybody sign liability waivers that are not unique to people with disabilities or adaptive fitness. So I understand the hesitation. And I think if that's your hesitation, then let's chat, because that is not a reason to exclude people with disabilities from doing exercise. You honestly, in my opinion, should be more liable if you do that, because of all the detriments that you're doing by not allowing them. Because
I see that, like, I know some of the YMCA's in Delaware, I think the one in Bear has some adaptive equipment and that kind of stuff. It's like, I wish that like every gym would have that, because there's so many people at home and they're the ones that really need the exercise and movement, just even talking about with Faith, anybody, if you don't use it, you lose it. And then if you don't even have it to begin with, you got to work extra hard. So I definitely think it's important. What's your goals, or what do you foresee with expanding and trying to get it into different? You need to come to Harford County is what I'm saying, really, bottom line.
I have a lot of requests, and then I have to remember like my meeting with my PhD advisor to be like, that is the real goal right now, is obtaining this degree. I think for me, what's key when I think about community fitness in the context that, we're building with Arena Adaptive, is I never want to be the reason that it's happening. So I want it to eventually be that if I remove myself from the equation,
it's still happening.
Arena continues, right? Like,
so you do that, and then you move on to the next one and train them. I see your aha moment where you're going with this. Go ahead, keep going.
So, because to me, like, unfortunately, especially in this space of adaptive fitness or adaptive sports, firsthand, right? Delaware used to have a sled hockey team, and now Delaware doesn't have a sled hockey team, right? And I understand from what I know of, which is very limited to the situation, kids aged up. There weren't enough kids who were kind of getting funneled in. Well, part of me is like, oh, I'm sorry. Are there not enough kids that could potentially play through AIGBOT? Because that seems odd to me. Or like, I can sit in a sled. I don't have to sit in a sled to play hockey, but I could sit in a sled to play hockey. Okay, well, like, is there a way to integrate community fitness that way so that all kids can have the chance to play a sport? But again, I think an aspect, and I have seen this, I've also collected this through I did a survey for the adaptive athletes who competed in the CrossFit Open. So 2021, 2021 was the first year that CrossFit had official divisions for adaptive athletes. And I wanted to know, like, who's doing this? Because if you're competing in the CrossFit Open, my hypothesis is you have overcome a lot of barriers and or have a lot of factors that support your ability to do something at this level that I hypothesize is not representative of people with disabilities as a whole. And so I want to kind of understand what's their experience with adaptive sport, fitness, and exercise, because they're proving that people with disabilities are just as capable to do this, right? But how do we get more people involved? And one section of the survey asked about if they had ever been part of other parasport organizations or things like the Kennedy Krieger, adaptive sports programs. And obviously not just Kennedy Krieger, because it's a worldwide survey.
Right.
And so, a lot of why people stopped was because programs stopped occurring. So the program, or they aged out, was another one, right? So, this is also not a news flash to anyone who's in the space, but there is more support for kids with disabilities. And at my old job, we saw this all the time. So I worked as part of the team that ran the Adaptive Sport and Fitness Center, and I was on the fitness side. But, Shirley Ryan has adaptive sport programs. Donors are so much more likely to donate to programs that support youth than they are to support adult programs. But you have to think about that, right? So what does that mean? Like, we're only promoting sport and fitness involvement until people are 18, and then sayonara, see you later. Granted, that is relatively true as well for non-disabled people, and I think there's some narratives changing on that as well. But to your point, it's more imperative that we kind of keep these things open. So anyways, I want more programs. I want to help other people start their program, and I'm willing to offer expertise. I'm willing to offer, support. I will be a cheerleader to it, right? But this has been a learning lesson for me. I cannot start arena adaptives all across the country. It's not physically possible for them to run to the level that they could if I'm the only one behind them. And so part of it is understanding your community. Like, that's how this started. I was trying to ask, what's the need of the community? Where would it be best? Who are community partnerships that are gonna, help us? Like, the RIV gave us a launch, but More Than Fitness is giving us this opportunity to grow and expand and develop this into something that's, even more vibrant. Okay. I don't know that in every community. I don't know that, where you are. I don't know who those people are. I don't know a community politician that maybe would help support this initiative. And
I do.
Well, yeah, but that's what I mean. So then it's more or less like, can I create a guidebook? I'm not actually creating this, guys, but I thought we could, but can I create a guidebook of hey, these are some steps you could consider. But when I've talked to people in the past, I'm start it in your gym. Just tell them that you're offering classes. You don't even have to have a new class. Just make it apparent that you're going to do this. And I do a lot of work with the Adaptive Training Academy, which is essentially, in my opinion, the number one resource for individuals, whether you're a coach, a trainer, an advocate, a parent. If you want to better understand how to train people with disabilities, in kind of a CrossFit context, but really just functional fitness, they offer seminars. It's a 2-day seminar where you can learn and understand how you do program changes, how you make sure that your gym space is safe, how you can just kind of get it going and understand a very 30,000 foot view of athletes with different types of impairments. PT school gave me we went way more in depth in this training, but you don't need that if you want to have people in your gym. And so Adaptive Training Academy is trying to take those barriers down of people who don't feel comfortable.
Cool.
So they train thousands of people, probably in a year, and that to me is okay, just start it from your own gym. Tell people that you want to have them in, bring them in, be excited about having them there. Be honest. If you're if you have someone who comes in, you've never worked with someone who uses a wheelchair, don't be afraid to ask them questions, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if a woman walked into your clinic and they were pregnant, or sorry, your gym, and they were pregnant, you would probably ask them like if they need any modifications to the workout.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like, nobody's fazed by that.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone comes in with a wheelchair, don't put them in the corner because you don't know what to do. Like, ask them, like, what can you do? Just because they use a
Right.
wheelchair doesn't mean they can't stand, right? Maybe they can do a squat out of their chair and they just need to hold on to the rig, right? So they can have something to stabilize themselves and they can stand up and sit down. Well, guess what? Like, now they're in their class and they're doing a squat, which is no different than the person who's got 400 pounds on their back doing the squat, or the person who's just holding a 20-pound kettlebell doing a squat to a box and standing back up. Everybody's doing a squat.
Yeah.
It just looks different. But like,
Yeah.
nobody looked twice when it was a 400-pound back squat or a 20-pound back squat. So don't look different when it's just a body weight squat and the wheelchair is behind them for safety.
Yeah.
All the same. So
Wow.
my plans for Arena Adaptive are to, I think the first next step is like 2 days a week where we're having classes. Because as much as I love the Monday nights that we have, I mean, we throw down and we have a good time. I also fundamentally know 1 day a week is not enough to make a big difference, right? So I work out almost every day of the week. So like, I can't offer that right now. How can I expand the community of Arena Adaptive so that we can offer more class times to give people the chance to work out more frequently? So that's kind of the first step goal. But again, in parallel with that, if someone is elsewhere listening to this and wants to start something, where they are, all my contact info, I'm sure, is going to be, in this pot. Reach out. Let's figure out how to get it started in your community. But it's not me that's making it happen. It's you that's making it happen. And that's going to make it stronger.
What, where in Wilmington are you located? Where is that located?
It's, I'm going to say it, Bellefonte.
So like in terms
of Bellefonte, and people were like, what? And I was like, I'm from New York. Let me be. It's northern Wilmington. It's really like right off. It's really close to 295, 495, and 95. So it's pretty easy to get to. It's actually located on the campus where the United Cerebral Palsy Foundation.
Oh, okay.
So that's the exact location where we are. So, what's cool is this new location is kind of steeped in this history of serving this same community that we want to serve. And so it's cool to have those roots there.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I don't even know what else to ask you because we went over so much and I just think that it's amazing, everything that you're doing. And I can't wait to see how it progresses. I definitely know that when summer comes, or maybe even if you have it during a time when Faith has off during the holidays, I definitely want to go and bring, because that would be so amazing. I really want Faith to get involved in and find a niche and a place to actually like start working out. Because like you said, I just think that it's great, like how you talked about the three that are just like bonding, and they're going through that stuff, because they're building relationships and bonds that are going to last a lifetime, and pushing each other, you can do it, and all of that stuff. Now with Run Your Days too, so outside of the Arena Adaptive, you're still doing like the one-to-one personal training type stuff?
So I still do one-on-one coaching. It's both like, fitness, whether that's like more strength and conditioning or running specific programs. And that's just for anyone. So I think I have 12 athletes right now. It's like fall marathon season. So I had like 4 athletes last weekend who are running. I have 2 this weekend that are running the Chicago Marathon. So it's a lot of fun. And I'm actually coaching an adaptive athlete who has kind of higher goals towards the CrossFit Games and whatnot, but wants to also, like, prior to their injury, used to run more frequently. And so kind of wanted to get more in that, but the running is more supplemental to their CrossFit training now. But we had this super cool conversation this morning about a CrossFit workout that's on the books for her Friday, and it involves running. And she was like, what do you think about, like, based on what we've been doing? And so we kind of talked about how to attack this workout coming up. So I am, I would definitely say I have a PT background, so that is there, but running has been my personal like biggest kind of fitness, but I love studying it all. And so probably CrossFit and running are the two things now that I would say I feel most comfortable coaching. But it's all about like, you know, I say CrossFit, but it's like, it's functional fitness, right? So, you know, I want people to be able to not only maybe extend like the quantity of years of their life, but like, what's the quality of your years later on? And so I coach my brother and my brother-in-law, and, you know, there's times where I step back and I think about like, yeah, it's cool that they're like running better, or they feel stronger, like they look healthier, they are feeling healthier. And I'm like, good, because I love you guys a lot. So I want you guys around for a long time. You know what I mean? And so there's that piece that it's like, I just want to help people towards whatever their fitness goals are. And so you don't have to be training for the Boston Marathon or an Olympic trials qualifier for me to feel like I want to coach you. It's just, I want to coach people who want to improve in their health and fitness in a variety of ways. So if that speaks to people, you know, reach out. If it doesn't feel like it's a good fit for me or for you, then we cross that bridge when we cross that bridge. But I love the coaching, and I'll probably always keep it as a side gig. I've had a couple times through these different transitions that I've gone through where I've thought about maybe it's time to kind of stop, and I don't like that thought anytime it pops up. So yeah.
That's good. Then that means you're meant to continue to do that.
Yeah.
So can you tell the listeners, where can they find you?
Sure. So you guys can find me. My website is runyourdays.com. That's also my Instagram handle, which you'll probably find the most information on. And then I also have a Twitter account, but I will be honest that I don't tweet too frequently. So yeah, that's kind of where you can find me. If you want to email me, it's just runyourdays@gmail.com. So it's pretty much run your days for everything, which is helpful. But yeah, the Instagram, I like to post obviously about arena adaptive and adaptive sports in general, but I'll sometimes do a couple of research reviews on different stuff that I'm either studying, and it's generally related to people with disabilities and exercise or step activity or physical activity or that kind of thing. So
awesome. And then I'm also going to put all of that, all those links in the show notes as well. So before we wrap up, I had emailed you to choose a word that's meaningful to you. And I wanted to know what you chose and why, if you're willing to share.
Yeah, that was really hard to choose one word. I chose arena because of all the reasons I kind of have talked about, and just having it on the keychain is a good reminder of, you know, for me to create that space for people, but for me to also have courage and not be afraid to be vulnerable and just keep opening up these different spaces so the people around me can feel the same. So,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're going to have days where you're down and you're like, oh my gosh, you know, and you have to recenter and bring it back to the whole reason of why you began it, you know, and that'll be a good reminder. So, well, I'm very excited. I'm just honored that you, came on the podcast, and I'm excited to see where you go and all the lives that you change. And with that, guess we will wrap up, and stay tuned for more episodes on the Guilbault Girls.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us as we spread awareness through our personal stories and the many resources shared. You can help us by joining our village simply by sharing our show to the masses. If you would like to support the Guilbault Girls on another level, click on the link in the show notes to make a donation in any amount. Add your address and you'll receive a hand-stamped token with the word village on it in appreciation. Be sure to subscribe to our Guilbault Girls podcast and YouTube show, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Guilbault Girls. Till next time.